Hey, cunts, don't forget to click the subscribe button.
Seminar, because my mental toughness, tenacity, etc., is modeled more about Winston, who was a pussy baby growing up, and he had to find things to toughen himself up. But it is no accident that when you look at Skibo Castle and Guthrie Castle, there's direct similarities. That's not a fucking accident. That's not motherfucking serendipity. Especially when I set my goals 28, 29 years ago. Before I knew about Guthrie Castle, before I knew a lot of the things, and by Allah's will, somebody's fucking will, umpteen years later, here I am. Although only 15 months later did I buy this place. Just as this room is the perfect place for this seminar, and I believe very much that, unfortunately, Corona is going to be with us a long, long time. And that's why this estate is the perfect metaphor for yesterday's dreams or today's realities. And I tell you, I didn't dream big enough. I didn't dream big enough. Although my first office with Great Western, my first chairman was Robert Anderson, former Secretary of the Treasury under Eisenhower, and my first office was 30 Rock Plaza, because we used his offices, Rockefeller Plaza, the top of Rock Plaza, where Mr. Rockefeller founded. He didn't found Exxon, it's Standard Oil there, but that's where his offices were. It's not an accident that the three sovereign governments have asked me for advice on their sovereign funds. And I can list thing after thing after thing after thing from now until tonight of the extraordinary feats that I've accomplished. Given the same information that we've given you here, without the webinars, without the templates, without all the bullshit. I call it bullshit. I don't mean it's bullshit, but just like I call everything shit. Yeah. With all the tools, the kids in the 90s who created tens of billions with nothing even remotely close to what you're leaving here with today or tomorrow. When Dan Locke and Bruce Whipple, amongst two, came back to the seminar after many, many years, he said, fuck. The only thing you don't do is buy the fucking first business for him, Dan. And you still fail. Now, admittedly, there is a small percentage of people that come to the seminar that don't have the mental capacity to use this shit. But we've got a guy on the Down syndrome guy. That's pretty far down the fucking the continuum. But it's not the intellectual capacity they don't have. There's no way they have the emotional capacity because they've got so much fucking baggage they can't get rid of it. We have a small percentage of people that have so much baggage. 40% of the women that come here have been sexually abused. 25% of the men that come here have been sexually abused. And the men being sexually abused are catching up to the gals, which is a sad commentary about life. A very sad commentary about life. We have transsexuals, bisexuals, all those initials that they have, for people that have different preferences, made this successful. We don't allow knowingly I don't allow pedophiles, but so they may be able to use it, but I just don't know about it because I don't allow them in the class if I know it. We've had a couple over the 25, 30 years that we had to get rid of. Every sexual persuasion known to man has made, except for the pedophiles, I'm not positive, has made this program work. But as Bruce and Dan said, when they came back after many years, what else can we do? Or Dan, what else can you do for them other than buy the deal? I said the first or second day, probably most of you would, I'll do the first deal, I'll take 99%, you take it. But then, why am I sitting here and not out there? The opportunities are so rampant. South Africa is a big example because they will literally have gold running in the streets because it's so fucked up there. God bless Nelson Mandela. Not for the reasons black people say God bless him, but he was a smart fuck. But he's not given credit for what he should have been given credit for. The world is our fucking oyster. And I would be disingenuous if I said it breaks my heart. But close. It breaks my fucking heart to see you not taken more seriously. It breaks my fucking heart to see you not be serious about this. It is going to be the biggest fucking regret you ever fucking had in your life. You will want to kick yourself the rest of your fucking life from 20, 25 years from now when your grandchildren say, what the fuck did you do during the greatest transformation of wealth in the history of the fucking 14 billion years the planet's been up? We're going to have more suicides 25 years from now than now. And you deserve to be killing yourself 20, 25 years from now if you don't use this shit. Even if you don't use it properly, you can get fucking rich. The webinars that we've heard so far, I say, everybody that you heard so far hasn't said 100% of the truth because they don't even know what the fuck they're doing. Right? The people you're going to hear today don't know what the fuck they're doing, but they're rich. It transcends not just not knowing about the industry you're in. You don't have to know anything. You don't have to know 2 and 2 equals 4. If you believed. But it's obvious to me you don't. It's as obvious as my $50 billion man bespoke suit that I'm wearing. It's the people that have faith. A lot of you believe in some higher power. You can't prove it. You believe it on faith. Every single person that you've heard so far in the webinar believes it on faith. They've said it different ways. If it's like the Word of God, the Book of Dan. And we have thousands of them. This afternoon, after you see the other 3 or 4 webinars, I'm going to ask you, which one resonated with you most? This guy, this gal, this guy, this guy. All of you will raise your hand to somebody. But it's obvious to me that they didn't resonate with you. It's obvious to me based on your questions. You're still asking questions that you shouldn't have even asked. If you had read all the materials I told you to read before you got here, and if you really knew my material like a lot of you bullshit, I've read everything you've done, Dan. Well, that's a lie. Either that or you're beyond the Down syndrome kid in stupidity. You can't possibly have read all that shit and asked the questions you asked. It's not fucking possible. Or you got a 40 IQ or whatever. And guys with 40 IQ can't talk. Remember I told you about the guy in the mission that Sally and I support, the St. Teresa, who was supposed to die after 2 or 3 months, and he's now 28 years old and he's got a head this big? He can't say the words. His body's this big and his head's this big. He could assimilate more of the material than you have assimilated based vis-a-vis your questions. Somebody asked me a day or two ago, pontificating about who shouldn't be born and who should be born. Now that kid, the nuns say he should have been born. I say he shouldn't have. Poor people say when you get pregnant, it's a gift of God. Well, God must have a fucking funny sense of humor if he allows a kid to have a fucking head this big after 28 years. Last night we talked about Andrew Carnegie, or not we talked, you saw a movie about Andrew Carnegie. He was never knighted. Based on the present value of money, he's given more money away than probably all the billionaires put together since they started keeping track of billionaires. And you saw some of the things that he's done. What's some of the takeaways about Mr. Carnegie? Yes, sir.
He was ruthless in his business, and even when he had his longtime friend, Tom Scott, ask him for a loan, he just shot him down, said no.
Yeah. I don't loan money to my friends. I give it to them because I know I'm never going to get it back. 3 years ago, we're having dinner with somebody that I've known since my military days, and he handed me a check. I said, what's this for? It's the money I borrowed from you in 1970, I forget when, which I had forgotten. I don't know. I forgot about it. I never, because when I gave it to him, I gave it to him. It's like trying to loan, well, of course, none of my relatives come to me. Trying to loan money to relatives. It's really a gift. But you're going to be a conduit, even if you do this half-assed, which I hope to Christ you don't. You're going to be a conduit of a new source of loans for your poor family members, because you're not going to get rid of your family members. There's not 10% of you that are going to do that. I don't mean rid of this way. It should be this way, but because I know you're not, because I've been doing this for 28 years. What else about Mr. Carnegie? Yes, sir.
He had an incredible work ethic that he started at age 5 when he started working 12 hours a day.
Now, of course, not just now, even when I was a kid, if you worked less than when you were 16 years old, it was against the law, etc. In America, you couldn't work until you got a Social Security card. I worked since I'm 11 years old. I worked on a big ranch, and I picked weeds and out in the San Fernando Valley. And I remember one time I fell asleep because I was only getting 2 or 3 hours sleep when I was 11, 12, and that's when you're growing, and you're supposed to get more sleep. And my mom came to pick me up on the big estate, and I was asleep up against a tree. And the first thing my mother did was see if any of the supervisors were around to see me sleeping. And then she started doing my job, didn't wake me up. Into the dark, she turned the headlights on of her little car, and we're through the garden picking shit. And then I woke up, and then we together on our knees, finishing the work till 1:30 in the morning. I'm 11. I should be 8'3", I think, instead of only 6'2". What else about Mr. Carnegie? Yes, sir.
He had fantastic people skills. So hiring, for example,
just
Mr.
like you.
Briggs. Yeah. So even though he admitted several times that he knows shit about steel making.
Okay, stop there. So far, all the people you've heard say they don't know fuck it all about the industries they make their icons in, right? But you want to know, especially dumb fucks like him, want to know the why. None of them know shit. Go ahead, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, so even though he admittedly he know nothing at least when he started, so he was always at the top of
Yeah, we understand. Okay.
tech developments. So this was basically one of the biggest attributes that he had as a person.
One of the hardest things. Remember, I told you it's harder for engineers, accountants, lawyers, blah, blah. For engineers especially, is they want to know the why that you're not even talking about. Well, where does that molecule come from? How to connect this? And I have a Chinese partner. He's a graduate aerospace engineer, but he did his first deal while he was a senior in school, and he said that everything that I'm doing to do this first acquisition in home health is contrary to what I'm learning and what I'm being tested in the university. It just, because I'm making a leap across the chasm, like Tan, the Vietnamese gangbanger, said, and I don't really know if my legs are strong enough to leap me off this side of the chasm to this side of the chasm. I have no data. I have no information. I have no case studies. How do I know that I'm going to make it? Other than we've got a whole string of people that say, yeah, you can make it. And then, well, that guy's stronger than me. That guy's white. That guy's black. That guy's China. And I'm just a little skinny Chinaman. You have no data to back it up that you can do a calculation on, but you do have data vis-a-vis people that are telling you you can do it because they did it. One of the real bases, the crux of this program is, if that do it, there's no reason I can't when you listen to them. That's the benefit to me of the webinars. Because it's better than a case study that you can study in, like reading it. But when you just see some of these guys and gals, as Gerard said, he had quit, and I did know he quit, even though he says that. He didn't think I knew. There's no way I can't do it if this piece of shit can do it. The webinars are good for that. But then some of you, that guy must be a Michelangelo, a secret Michelangelo with a 300 IQ. Because you're so used to using excuses to engage in self-sabotaging activity. It's like when I say I can't remember the last time I lost, and you have trouble remembering or recalling the last time you won, if ever. So the webinars are good for that. If I could get a lower level of high-performance webinar person, well, I'm running out of them now. So pretty soon we may not have any webinars because the guys don't want to, and I'm not paying them. There are still people that in YouTube and think that you're not real. I pay you from Central Casting, you're actors. There are still people that believe that. And these aren't people that are living in huts, in the jungle. These are people that have IP addresses, and there are still people that believe you guys aren't real. And then when I read the threads years ago, and one guy said, well, what benefit has Peña got to hire actors and do all this shit? And he gives all the material away. But there are people, because they have to justify in their own mind why they haven't done anything. So they think that I'm putting on the charade of actors. I could hire better looking actors than this, believe me. And I can hire actors that followed scripts and asked better questions than you guys. What else about Mr. Carnegie? Yes, sir.
He was a stand for world peace.
A what?
World peace.
Oh, yeah. He went from beating up his employees with axe handles, hired the Pinkertons, to then he was an ambassador for world peace. He was against the war, first war. He died in 1919, right at the end of the World War. And he didn't die from the corona. But it'd be a better story. Maybe 10 years from now, he will have brought corona to Scotland. In 1919 will be my story in a few years. Yeah, he was a pacifist. Now, I told you the first day, Tom Watson, the founder of IBM, amongst Mr. Ford, the Ford first, the founder of Ford Motor Company, were both proponents and supported Hitler during the war. They supported Hitler during the war, and they got the what do you call it, the Nazi cross. And Tom Watson gave his Nazi cross back to Mr. Hitler. And they promoted, because they made the decision, not unlike today's decision about we would rather have commerce than save lives for Corona. They made the decision that war was good for business. Well, any guy that took Econ 101 knows war is good for business. And so they supported, and at that time, up until the Americans entered the war, in 1943-4, or 1 after Pearl Harbor, they thought that Germany was going to win the war, so they wanted to do business and have contracts with the Germans, because we were going to be speaking German. And there's a movie that came out about 10 or 15 years ago with a famous Dutch actor who played it in Blade Runner, that if they had woken up Hitler and they would have stopped us at Normandy, in the United States, we'd be speaking German up to in all the land east of the Mississippi. And if the Japanese had continued after Pearl Harbor to the United States to invade, we'd be speaking Japanese west of the Mississippi. And it's an interesting movie, the parallels that if just one or two things had happened, if the Japanese admiral had not turned around and gone back, and if Hitler, somebody had poked him to wake him up, but everybody was afraid to wake him up. Just two little things. And otherwise, I would have been on the Hitler side. I could relate more to the Germans, so I would have been on the Hitler, and as opposed to the Japanese. What else about Mr. Carnegie? Yes, sir.
He borrowed very heavily to grow his business and dominate.
And it's the QLA model. Borrow and borrow big. Mr. Onassis' rule was as well. Borrow and borrow big, because he didn't want to share the equity. And that's why our model is a commercial debt-driven model, because he didn't want to give up equity to equity investors. They had the equivalent of private equity back in the day. They didn't call it private equity. J.P. Morgan was one of the biggest. Debt-driven. And one of the things that you didn't mention, and I thought, if you guys were really any smart, the guys that are doing this in South Africa, i.e. Anelli, he said 10% is going interest rate, and the best deal, I think he said 7.5, something like that. Do you realize the deals have to be 50, 60, 100% better at 10% interest rate than at 5%? You understand that? We were doing this when interest rates were 18 and 20%. Cash flow has to be equivalently larger to cover the debt. And now they're giving money away. Literally, they're giving money away. Anything else about Mr. Carnegie? Yes, sir.
He learned at a young age to be very frugal. His mother taught him that you look after the pennies and the pounds will follow. And he used that throughout his business to always put money back in his business and grow it.
I didn't learn that. That's one of the things I don't follow, the frugality part. And a few of the kids, and I'm not recommending you do this, follow my model, spend 125% of everything you make, and you never have a backup plan. By definition, you don't have a backup plan. So you can never slow down. You never take your foot off the accelerator, and I've never used the brake. Is that where the brake? I haven't driven in 25 years. No. Isn't the gas pedal and then the brake just to the left of it if you're driving on the American side? Isn't that right? Okay, well then you never use the brake. Huh? Oh, you still? Only the right foot. Okay. Well, I have not driven a car in almost 30 years. Only the right foot. The last time I drove, Danny was about, 3 or 4 years old, and I used to collect cars, and one of the antique rolls is we pull out of the driveway and we're going into Forfar. We were here about 3 or 4 years. And I'm sitting on the British side, which is this side, and Danny's pulling on my sleeve like this, and he says, Daddy, do you see the truck? And I look up about where Benedict is, and there's this big fucking truck. I'm on the wrong side of the road. Because the last time I'd driven before that, it was in the United States, and I swerve off the road into the ditch, and that was it. I had a chauffeur then, all that, but I wanted to take the kid in. We were going to go into town for something, I forget what it was. And he says, Daddy, do you see the truck? Swerve over. But Sally thinks that I should get a public award for not driving for all the lives I've saved. Anything else about Mr. Carnegie? But guys, this is not a coincidence. But I set these goals 25, 30, 35, 40 years ago. Affirmations, goals. I've had about 25 or 28 goals, of which about 10 or 11 of them have been my family oriented when the kids were little, and then they grew up, and then they got out of high school, and then they got into college, and one of them is married, and one of them has kids, and now I have goals and affirmations for our grandchildren. So I just kind of erased the names, and then the other goals are in the last 30 years are based on you guys and gals that have come through the seminars. I feel comfortable and great seeing my mentees win Nobel Prizes. Blah, 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 blah. I never get invited to the ceremonies. I understand. I'm okay with that. Blah, 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 and some of the kids have really come through. But you could never underestimate how wrong you can be. I've been wrong about a few, but for the most part, I mean, the kids have outperformed, and almost all those superstars. I'm the alpha male dad they didn't have, and they want to perform for me. I don't give a fuck what rationale you use to get super successful. I don't care if you want to do it in spite of me, or for me, or because of me. The only thing I care is about you fucking do it. Because I know what you're capable of. You're going to see some mice today, little mice, that if that doesn't fucking instill you, God knows. Except for the Down syndrome kid. I mean, we got an Asperger kid that I just got an email from today. But my heart can't do a webinar with him. It ain't right. There's some things that just ain't right, and that's one of them. But okay, enough about, yes sir, in the back.
Yeah, he detested his father and loved his mother, and only after his mother had passed away, he could actually bond with his wife, and he wanted to please his mother.
Well, it's interesting. I told you that when we were at Skibo for my 75th birthday, Sally took me there, and we stayed in his daughter's suite. At the corner of the castle, well, there's a bunch of corners of Skibo Castle, but at one corner of the castle is his big suite, and right connected to his suite is his daughter's suite. Where's his wife's suite? 140 yards down the other end of the castle in a suite that's like the butler suite. You know, not any size or, grandiose. And I'm sure that's just coincidental and accident, But he didn't have any kids till he was 50. He didn't get married till he was about 50. And he had one kid, the daughter, and rumor or legend has he wanted to have a son. It didn't work out, but as I tell Thomas, who's got 5 sons now, 5, I said, women can have either one. It's you are producing the boys. That's what they told me after 3 sons, Mr. Peña. I don't believe it. That means A sixth is probably coming down the road. Okay. See you later, YouTubers.